We're all engaged in the act of creation, all the time, creating new universes with our every thought. But is there some missing additional variable also influencing us? That we're not simply creating, but co-creating? Could this missing variable be called God? Could it be some form of energy from the universe itself? Or could it come from nature, from other humans, from animals, from plants, from rocks, from the environment? Or is it internal to us and not conscious? Somehow shaped by our beliefs. What shapes our beliefs? Is it personality? Is it genetic? Are we being programmed? From the Enlightenment and the scientific method, we're told that there's only right and wrong. But what if right and wrong coexist simultaneously? Could this variable itself be simultaneously external and external? Could all these variables be influencing this act of creation? The only thing but preventing us from believing it all is that we seek a single, simple solution. But solutions are rarely so unitary. If we listen with our hearts and not our heads, the solution becomes more apparent and indeed more contradictory. Are our thoughts our own? What shapes these thoughts? Could it be our beliefs? Or what shapes those beliefs? We buy a new product. We believe that it's to fulfill a need. But after we bought it, worn it, used it, or consumed it, we feel unsatisfied, somehow betrayed. I'm thinking of the super rich that already have enough money to fulfill all their needs, and those of future generations of their offspring. But they still want more. They have a drive, an impulse for more. But where does this impulse come from? Because they're clearly not needs. When Edward Bernays operationalised his uncle Sigmund Freud's psychology, he gave producers the ability to create, to manufacture these desires. And it's these desires which influence our purchases, not our needs. So they're not our own. Indeed, Bernays promoted Lucky Strike cigarettes to women who at the time rarely smoked, exposing the fallacy that consumption is related to need. Bernays' work came at a time when producers could already satisfy all of our needs through mass production and the application of Taylorism. So creating desire enabled producers to keep expanding production. During World War I, Bernays worked for the Committee on Public Information. He turned his attention then to propaganda. And this was seminal in Bernays' career, and much of his commercial work came after this, flowing from it. So it would seem that governments also have an interest in shaping public opinion, not simply during wartime. I mean, of course, this seems most apparent in Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union and Mao's China, but all governments seek to influence our beliefs to some degree or another. Not simply through public advertising and marketing, but through simpler methods, subtler methods, like education, the media, increasingly social media. And what the last 3 years should have exposed is how subtle these can be, but also, when met with opposition, how draconian they may become. From our ancestors. Could some beliefs be transmitted to us in our DNA? Well, certainly some appear to be. Children seem to be frightened of snakes, even though they may never have seen one before. It's often said that babies can swim naturally. Maybe they can't, but they have reflexes which enable swimming of a sort. Or at least until they pick up on the idea that water is dangerous. Certain signs or motifs appear to have a universal meaning. We all seem to subscribe to a categorization of people by archetypes, or at least recognize these archetypes in human behavior. There also seem to be persistent myths and legends which are found cutting across civilizations. I don't want to say all civilizations, but certainly cutting across them. Could this come from our DNA? What about mitochondrial DNA? But this is a secondary DNA. And could this secondary DNA be transmitting these communal beliefs? Or at least shaping them? So ultimately, what is their origin? I mean, this mitochondrial DNA seems to point to a single female. Call her Eve if you like. Although the evidence suggests that she came from a man, and thus was not created. Could this tell us more about our origins than simply a single female? Although DNA could be responsible for transmitting some beliefs and behaviour, nurture is also important. So much of our behaviour seems to be influenced by our early experiences. Experiences before we have a sense of self, before the ego has developed. And narcissists and empaths appear to be a response to early childhood trauma, in particular some form of rejection by our parents. Such rejection may have been entirely innocent. Like so many, I was rejected by my mother when my father asked her to go back to work. My father bought a grocery store and converted half into a hairdresser's for my mother to work in, and we lived above this store. My father's intentions were entirely selfless, not wanting me to experience the hardship of his wartime childhood had brought with it. I believe this resulted in me becoming an empath, always seeking to please. I probably felt in some way that I displeased my parents to be punished in this manner. Certainly I was also terrified of being left alone in this flat. At first unable to navigate the stairs to even be with my mum. But it brought out the narcissism within my mother. She never forgave my dad for taking her away from her only child. Indeed, she was still telling all who would listen up until her death. I have no idea why my mum was a covert narcissist. I may only speculate. But I do know that a young brother was very ill when young and nearly died. The attention my uncle got probably resulted in resentment by my mother and explains her lifetime mystery illnesses, seeking attention. And maybe also the stories she told, seeking sympathy, which have resulted in me being cut off from her family. Now, whilst only around 1% of the population are true empaths, 15 to 20% exhibit some empathetic traits. The dark triad, which includes narcissists, psychopaths and Machiavellians, could make up as much as 20% of the population. But they are disproportionately represented in positions of power. They're therefore more likely to be shaping our thoughts and therefore the universes we create. The childhood trauma which creates narcissists and empaths also seems to produce a drive for success. But success in what? All too often this means wealth and hoarding of God's resources. And we've been ridiculously told that this is not in the interests that this is in the interest of humanity and drives development and innovation. But when a single psychopath has all the world's resources, will they find happiness? Of course not. The ridiculousness of their greed will be exposed for all to see, themselves included. Maybe they'll even come to realise that this is not the path to God. But not before labelling us communists, fascists, sea theorists, Satanists, even using their laws to punish us for the labels they've created for us. But by then we'll all see through it, themselves included, and their destructive facade will be over. So more than anything, nurture seems to shape our personality, which is only an expression of our beliefs. Of course, there are many ways of categorising personality. Each seems to have some resonance when it's studied. But then maybe everything ultimately can be proven with the right experiment, especially if we create our reality. Then our own beliefs shape the outcome of whatever experiment we might wish to create, including double-blind experiments. For if we create reality, then we're able to shape everything within it. Now, archetypes might be one categorization of personality, and given that it might be linked to nature, should we at least consider it? But the interesting issue is that personality shapes our actions and thoughts. This means that personality plays an important part in co-creating our universe. However, even the most reliable personality tests suggest that personality itself changes. Perhaps personality is malleable. In fact, personality tests are norm-referenced, and these norms regularly change to reflect changes in the population. Now, many of these changes could be seen as reflecting an increasing level of what in the past would have been considered mental illness, expressly traits associated with narcissism and psychopathy. Furthermore, there are no distinct traits, but collections reflecting their relative strength within these personality types. At times we may all exhibit traits within all personality types. Thinking of archetypes, perhaps they're all within us, and we shift the most appropriate archetype to the circumstances. Some may be hidden within our subconscious, but they will be there. Indeed, our shadow self probably reflects the early childhood trauma that I speak about, which so influences our personality. Could it be that we exhibit different personality types within the different universes we create? We all like to see our beliefs as unique to us, belonging to us and us alone. But are they really? Maybe 60 to 79% of us are simply followers. So what is it that we are following? Religious dogma? The ideologies of others, dominant philosophies like the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment has encouraged us to see everything as inert, often including man himself, that everything may be understood by a machine metaphor, that all problems may be solved by the atomization of variables, including knowledge itself, and that once a problem is solved, we can move on to the next. There is also an assumption of progress. The man is now cleverer and more sophisticated than he's ever been. To us, such beliefs have an internal consistency. But all too often, when examined, they're full of myths. Even prejudice is. So thinking of the Enlightenment, do we ever really solve our problems? Following the Enlightenment logic, the problem was ill-defined, not split into optimal constituent parts. Or simply we weren't logical enough. But could it be that the very assumptions of the Enlightenment are now the cause of so many of our problems? So often they are a shortcut to deep thinking, especially thinking from the heart. The environment is constantly talking to us. Yes, the environment is constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. Is it possible that we're receiving cues from our environment on how we should shape it, how we should behave towards it? Albeit that few of us are prepared to listen. At some point, all of God's creation was connected, and we still have an entanglement through a yet to be understood energy. The environment is constantly talking to us. When I walk in the mountains, I can feel them talking to me, although I don't always understand what they're saying. But I'm certain that it does not want to be treated like it's stupid, like a machine, to be used until it's broken. not least as it cannot be readily replaced. These are the cues that the environment sends to us, that if we respect it, it'll respect us. The environment is constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. The environment seeks balance. And when we seek to control it, it fights back. Earthquakes, volcanoes are all indications of this. But could it not also be active in the environments we create through our thinking? A balance in a way that some would call karma. But it's not judgmental. Simply seeking to balance once more. At a much smaller level of granulation, rocks and precious stones seem to be imprinted with this same consciousness. Maybe at a lower resolution, but the very same consciousness, urging us to seek balance and resist the desire to control everything. Many report calming effects from certain crystals. Is our environment subtly affecting our thinking, and therefore how we reflect back on the environment? Nature is constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. Just as I speak with the mountains, I also do with plants and animals. Again, not always successfully. But they do appear to be urging us to do the same as the mountains. To live a simple life, at home with nature. When we can truly communicate with plants and animals, far from being a lower order, they seem far more comfortable with nature. So much of the Enlightenment was focused on what divides us from plants and animals. The plants and animals have never developed a culture. But isn't culture one of the same devices whose aim is to control our thoughts? Could plants and animals be recycled souls who need to learn humanity? That's certainly how they feel. How are they impacting on our thinking and on our creation of universes? Well, we are certainly connected. Are they also engaged in co-creation? Why not? Quite apart from advertising, propaganda, we're also affected by the energy of others. After all, if we are all linked, all of God's creation is linked, then this includes our fellow man. Is this will? Others are constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. Maybe this will passes along these connections, finding the points of least resistance. Remember, some 60 to 79% are simply followers. So we are shaped by forces that we really don't understand, dragged into universes created by others. And if our personality is shifting, Maybe we are simultaneously in many universes, some which we create, but others come from the thoughts of others. Maybe we need to consider what are others. Is this not also a product of the Enlightenment? Could humanity be a single organism, more like a fungi than individuals? If we can accept this, then we are no longer different personalities within the universes of others, for there are no others, simply different attributes within this single organism. Should we stop there? What of plants and animals? Even that which we've been led to believe is inanimate. If we can accept this, then so much seems to fit in terms of the influences that we have described. But alas, our own ego and our belief in atomizing makes this an extremely difficult concept to accept. Our journey towards God is marked by so many dead ends, as though they're designed to make our path more difficult. Maybe that's it. Maybe they are. Are these the dead ends followed by what we call others? But then I've said maybe there are no others, only one humanity. Would this mean that we cannot find God till what we call all have done so? Until all of humanity has found a path to God, can we then progress? For we are all one. The universe is constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. What is the universe? If we're constantly engaged in co-creating it with God, especially if time is a human construct, abandon such thoughts for a while, as we do appear to receive some energy from the universe itself. What we see as reality appears to be our brain processing this energy. We believe this to be in 3 dimensions, but it would seem to be in 2 dimensions, with the appearance of being in 3 dimensions. That our reality is a hologram which begins to make sense of this energy, an energy which we then process to create what we call our reality. God is constantly talking to us. If only we could hear. Isn't this missing element God? For in the end, all these elements sent energy to us. But who created these? Was it God? When they were a single organism, God is unknowable. God is everywhere and nowhere. So God must also be within us. What is our purpose on this earth? Might it ultimately be to unite with God? We might only be doing so by learning, but learning from the heart. Learning to suppress our own ego and ignoring those of others. If this is true, then so much of this energy, especially from narcissists and psychopaths, is designed to push us off this path. So if this energy of others is designed to push us off the path from true learning to suppress our ego, learning to get closer to God, then how should we do it? Clearly we should not be so influenced by others, whilst remaining compassionate, whilst having love for others and forgiving for others. But we do need to find our own path. For you see, everybody has an individual path to God. And no matter how much others like to tell us that theirs is the only path, there are many paths. The scriptures appear to be full of allegory. Allegory pointing to the need to transform ourselves, to transmute ourselves. Indeed, I would call it a personal alchemy. A personal alchemy by which we need to unite all sides of ourselves. The male, the female, the right and left hand brains, the light and the darkness, if you like, the good and the evil. We need to understand our shadow self for sure. For only once we've united these and can actually become a self-actualizing whole, can we resist being pushed off our path by others. And then I really do believe that we will get close to God. And I really do believe that this is why we're here.